Big thanks to Nadia. I think she only agreed to do the presentation like a week and a half ago, so managed to put all that together, so that's awesome. We're going to try and get you out of here by 7, so we're going to rip through this at a rate of knots. If you've been to a recap before, it's like a death by PowerPoint with like 200 announcements, so we'll try to slim it down a little bit, but there's still a few things in there, so we'll see how we go. And if the clicker have I got the same problem with it being off? No, it says it's on. Is it focused up here?
There you go and select it.
Okay, cool. So over 60,000 attendees, like 6 hotels, which means that if you want to get from one session to another, that can take you like an hour and a half to get around. So plan very well if you're going to go there. 2,400 sessions, 3,500 speakers. So the stats on it are pretty big and just getting bigger every year. State of the cloud, S3 now holding 500 trillion objects, hundreds of exabytes of data, 200 million requests per second daily. Anyone build a system that's doing 200 million requests per second? Probably not. For the third year in a row, more than half of the CPU capacity that's been added to AWS has come from Graviton. And I think I saw a stat that like every day of last year, AWS added as much capacity as they had in 2013 or something, so every day. There's now 38 regions, 120 availability zones. There were 3 new regions last year. Can anyone name one? Singapore? Come on, bro. Malaysia? New Zealand? Thailand, I think, was the third. More than 9 million kilometres of terrestrial and subsea fibre. 121 countries for user groups, obviously including us. Bedrock now powering inference for 100,000 companies. And Agent Core SDK having done more than 2 million downloads since October. Did anyone see this video? It was a little bit corny, I thought, but as a bit of a laugh, they grabbed a mainframe, hoisted it up by a crane, and then blew it up, and that was the segue to introduce Transform. So Transform is a service that allows you to modernize different components of your stack. So it can be used for VMware migrations into cloud. It can be used for Windows modernization. So think Windows, what's it called? .NET Framework into .NET Core, and then run that on containers, whereas previously you were stuck with using Windows operating system. Mainframe modernization, and then custom transformation. So this one's pretty cool. You can actually go in there, create a custom transformation that you might use if you've got like a large number of code bases where you're doing sort of similar upgrades, and you can run that to your heart's content across different applications that you might have. Anyway, and that was the reason for blowing up the mainframe, okay? These are like some of the transitions that you can make. So think like SQL Server to Aurora Postgres, .NET Framework we talked about, and then taking your VMs and running them on containers. Nova 2 was announced. It's got a 70% larger context window. It's got hybrid reasoning, which means that you can dial up or down how much reasoning you would like. I think it's like 3 levels, low, medium, and high, or something like that. Very good at code generation, content processing, and search. We saw some of the capabilities with the Nova Act SDK from Nadia just before. 7 times lower cost, 5 times faster, and there's some stats on the tokens. I'm not sure exactly which region that is, but you know, regions vary a little bit, so that's the caveat on the pricing. All these different variations, right? So from embedding right through to speech to speech. So the performance on this is amazing. So you can like talk to it and it's talking back in real time. So if you haven't given it a crack, would recommend it. It's pretty astonishing in my mind, in my view. Agent Core. So Agent Core was already available, but 2 new significant features were announced for Agent Core. So the first one is policy. So this gives you the ability to intercept tool calls on the way in and on the way back and make sure that they're compliant with the policies that you've set up. If you've used verified permissions, which uses the CEDAR language, this also uses the CEDAR language, so you can use that. Works at scale, granular access, and consistent policies with centralized control, so you can sort of roll that out at scale across your agentic workloads. Whew, going fast. Evaluations, so measure how well your agentic solutions are performing with evaluations. There are built-in evaluations that you can use, but you can also build your own. You can sample your agentic interactions and then assess how well they're performing across a larger set. And then something else? Yeah, various levels of granularity, right? So you've got the ability to sort of poke around as much as you'd like. Did anyone see AI factories? AI factories is probably the most demanding AI use case needs. So think kind of nation state or like very large corporate institutions. This is the ability to deploy GPUs in their thousands into existing infrastructure. I think the quantum is something like several thousand GPUs worth to sort of qualify for this, and in the sort of hundreds of millions of dollars over 5 years sort of range, something like that. So quite big use cases. Nova Forge, definitely more accessible, still like pretty for the power users. So Nova Forge, has anyone had a shot at creating a frontier model or fine-tuning a model? No? Okay, so up until now, the way to do that has been quite complicated. Nova Forge makes that much more accessible. So in using Nova Forge, you can take models from a checkpoint and then bring your own data and then create your own frontier model based off of that. So if you had a specific use case and you had a lot of background data on how to go about that, rather than trying to shove that in via context, you could append that to an existing frontier model, and then out pops a Pop-Tart of your own model. And so you can get started with that. CloudWatch Unified Data Store brings together operational data from a variety of sources now. So think security plus logging, telemetry, and so forth. Aggregating all of that together. Doing that using OCSF format and OTel. So like a big push towards using open standards with the CloudWatch Unified, which I think is a really good thing for the industry. And then compatible with open source data tooling like Iceberg through S3 tables, so awesome stuff. Regional NAT gateways. So everyone's, well, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people would have provisioned NAT gateways, having to do it one AZ at a time. This is now a regional service, so you can provision that and then attach it to the VPCs of your choosing. So there's just one, but it's got an interface into each. You don't actually need the public subnet anymore, so it's a slight change in the way the routing works. So if you only had that public subnet just to allow the NAT gateway to work, you actually don't need that anymore. So quite a nice thing. Yeah, you can kind of see that in the diagram, right? So you've just got the gateway. Normally you would have that with an ENI dropping into the public subnet, no longer required. I think price-wise, you're still paying like per AZ that it's attached to. So if it's only attached to one AZ, it's cheaper than if it was attached to 3. But from ease of administration and stuff, I think the benefits are there. And then network encryption control. So these are for demanding regulatory use cases where people need to prove that they have encryption across all of their network. So it relies heavily on the Nitro chips. It'll tell you where you're using configuration that can't be verified as being encrypted. Your Nitro chips are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that. You've got 2 modes, monitor or enforce. So if you're in one of these use cases, obviously you'd throw it into monitor, kind of surface what needs remediation and then go through and remediate that before you go into enforce. I think that would probably be the normal pathway, right? So this gives guarantees then around end-to-end encryption, apart from a couple of use cases which can't be because they're interfacing with the outside world. So think internet gateways. There's obviously some limits to that, right? Guard duty, AWS Backup now has malware scanning. S3 has malware scanning. And then there's some additional threat detection modules for ECS and EC2 in addition to these 3 that already existed. So Guard duty getting a broader set of capabilities there, which is awesome. Security incident response. So this already existed, but previously you had to pay for it separately. If you're in an organization that has enterprise support, this is now part of that. So I think that's a really good benefit for customers. What else? No, I think that's it. And then, yeah, it's just kind of, they've done this pay-as-you-go pricing. So I think you used to have like a fixed cost and then some variable component, I think. This is now kind of, if you're on enterprise support, it's bundled in. Whew. Frontier agents. Did anyone hear about the 3 Frontier agents that were launched at reInvent? There are 3. One of them is a DevOps agent, one of them is this security agent, and the third one is a Kiro developer agent. So I don't know, maybe in like a few months your talk could be revised and like kind of using all 3 of those to do something kind of interesting. But this security one and the DevOps one, they're great at identifying issues or potential issues and bringing them to your attention. They work well with kind of like the ITSM tools, so lodging an issue into ServiceNow and then supporting that with findings and doing research and trying to make recommendations. I don't think they're making changes at the moment. It's really an information kind of visibility tool. So highly recommend. Had some good success with the DevOps one in terms of increasing the reliability of some applications that I've been working on. So recommend you have a look at it if you're interested. Are you touching on? Yeah, okay, cool. And Kiro's got one for development. So you can go to the actual Kiro web app and you can give it like long-running tasks. And so, at the moment where your session's kind of tied to your shell or your IDE, these will just like crunch away. So if your laptop goes to sleep, it doesn't matter. It's full steam ahead. CloudFront has this new thing called flat rate pricing. So it includes some of these edge services. So WAF, DDoS protection, DNS. Actually not sure about the S3. That's an interesting one because I wouldn't have sort of expected that to be bundled in. But yeah, there's like these quite significant monthly usage allowances bundled in. So you can sort of pay one price for all of that stuff. And that generally covers WAF like across the whole organization in this kind of a model. That's like why you'd go and do that, I think. Organizations had a couple of small changes. So transferring accounts, you don't have to like unhook it from an organization to then hook it to the new one. You can kind of go straight from old to new. So it sort of takes that 2-step process and makes it one, so a bit more seamless. And then some centralized billing management, but that's kind of a partner concern, but we do have a few partners here. So Leo, aka Kuiper, Project Kuiper. People probably across that. Yeah, so that's the AWS answer to Starlink, if you will. So it's low Earth orbit satellites. They have about 180 of those satellites in the sky now. I think there's a public website where you can track all the satellites that are up there. So you'll see Leo on that dashboard and where they are and what they're doing. It got rebranded around this time, I think, from memory. So what they've announced now is that the path from the antenna, which would be at your site or boat or camper van or like wherever you've got your antenna, will traverse the satellites to a LEO-controlled ground gateway. There will be these points of presence, but now there are multiple paths, right? So you can break out to internet. You can go privately straight into your cloud, or you can go to one of these Meet Me Room, which is effectively like a colo where there's an interconnect straight into another network, okay? So these two were the ones that had been worked on for a while and were made public. So you can kind of have private connectivity from the most remote locations right through to your private AWS network without ever being on the internet and at quite low latency, right? It's going up to the low Earth orbit and back in like 50 milliseconds. Which I think is interesting because it kind of presents some new models, especially with our far regional locations in WA, which can be thousands of kilometres from a metro. And what do those network topologies of the future look like where you can be 50 milliseconds from anywhere rather than going over traditional fibre. Did anyone see Interconnect? So Interconnect is now cloud service provider to cloud service provider direct connectivity. So you don't need a WAN in the middle or something else. So it was announced at launch with Google being the other CSP that's supporting this. So GCP and AWS are now supporting this. Hopefully we'll see Azure on there at some point, but I don't think that's been announced just yet. Another option for that hybrid cloud connectivity. Databases now got savings plans. They already had reserved instances? Yeah, they did. So they got savings plans now. So whereas savings plans used to only be for compute, covering things like EC2, ECS, EKS, and Lambda, you've now got savings plans for databases. So you don't have to be as specific about how you want to reserve that capacity. You can pay for dollars per hour, and that will go across a whole variety of different database engine types. You can use SQL Server Developer Edition. So functionally, I think that works the same as Enterprise. It was not supported until now. Now it's supported, so you can go hard with Developer Edition databases. Do you want 25 more announcements? Is there 25? It says 24. I don't know. Oh no, I've got no, I don't have 213s. Okay, lots of new instance types. So we got new X8Is, the AMD family, the C8As with up to 192 chips. Blah blah blah. Some new Mac instances for everyone who's running. What's it called? Claw. What's the thing? Yeah, OpenClaw. It's like a security issue in a box, I think. Lambda durable functions. Just get a mention. Oh, well, you're going to cover that off in a bit more detail. Increase of 10x on the maximum object size for S3, so now 50 terabytes per object. Batch operations, intelligent tiering for S3 tables, I think it's pretty good. So until now it was all at one fixed price, so doing the same thing as the general object storage, which is cool. Automatic replication, so if you had an S3 table, you can now replicate that cross-region or cross-account, which might be good if you're like a service provider. You could then replicate that to your customer's account. They've then got the table available for them to query against, things like that. S3 vectors was private or like preview, went to GA, so that's good. OpenSearch serverless, EMR serverless. New things, GuardDuty, I think we talked about a little bit already. Security Hub went GA. CloudWatch Unified Data Store we talked about. Storage increases for databases. That's about it. Oh, and Developer Edition, I think we already covered. Is that me? That's me. Whew. And one microphone.
Thank you, James. Okay, I promise I'm going to be quick. I'm just going to talk to you about I'm going to speak to the developers in the room. I'm going to talk about my favorite things from the developer point of view. So we now have a new tool. So this tool speaks to me. So I, as a developer, I use my local machine with my super admin account that does everything, that has the power to do everything. And then I upload to production. And then I watch all the red lines in my console go red, 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 because I forgot to enable my IAM, because I'm so complacent and comfortable using my super admin on local that I forgot my IAM policy when going to production. So what this tool will do is it will scan your code and generate your IAM policy based on what's inside your code. I'm thinking this is one of those moments that this should have been here from year one, but it's here now. So I'm going to be looking forward to using this as a developer. So no more red line in my console. Temporary permission delegation. So STS is now capable of using JWT. So you continue to use your short-term token service as normal. You call your CLI or SDK. You get, instead of getting an IAM session token API key, STS will now return to you a JWT, a regular standard JWT. You use this JWT for external services, for third-party APIs. So that means your AWS workloads can now authenticate with like Facebook, Google, or any other API that performs standard JWT verification. So this is one of those case scenarios where, as developers, we've hacked things together. We've used like custom API keys. We use secret manager. We use custom identity brokerage. These are one of those moments where we can throw away all those hacks, and we can now nicely and cleanly authenticate with third-party systems using our JWT from STS. Response streaming from REST APIs. So I think there's a video. I'm going to try and see if this works. I'm going to press play. Oh, now I have to do it on the laptop. Ooh.
Bring your mouse back.
I will move on.
There you go.
Oh. So you can see streaming. Like if you used AI chatbots, you see that streaming effect where the text just trickles down. And then that's our traditional REST API where the whole thing is given in one lump. So what AWS is saying is now is for REST APIs, you don't have to wait for your whole response to be created and buffered and sent in one large package. We can now do streaming with REST APIs. Why that is important is because in the old days, to do that streaming effect, you would have to use the HTTP API gateway with WebSockets. But now your REST API gateway type API gateways can now do streaming. So that's a new change. API gateway portal. So we talked about this, well, Nadia talked about this before. Basically, this isn't a new service. This is basically an open source application that AWS have written and uploaded to GitHub. It's basically a wrapper for Swagger. Everyone familiar with Swagger? Yep. For those that are not. So Swagger is just a nice tool that developers can use to upload their API documentation and make the API documentation presentable in a nice, rich UI for other developers to consume and learn the API specs for your API. And it also comes with a nice built-in client test tool where, for sanity moments where there's nothing worse than being a developer and testing an API and it's not working, and if you're wondering if it's them or if it's you. So now developers can test your API with a built-in client without having to make a whole application. So basically, AWS have wrapped this all up into a nice application for you to download. You customize it, you upload it to S3, and then you have a nice test tool / documentation for your users or your consuming developers. The reason AWS have done this is for our next slide. They have purposely put this question afterwards. Do you want your API as an MCP? What AWS is saying is, if you want to use MCP, to make your API discoverable, use something like the AWS API Gateway portal to make your APIs more discoverable to MCP tools. So hence that question. Maybe for audience interaction for a bit, would you want to use your API as an MCP tool? Yes? No? Okay. So actually, I've given you 1 minute to go, Sean.
Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll stay here. I've got some content. I'm not going to be getting through all of it, so I'll just do what I can with what's here. All right, so apologies if this is too fast for you. So basically, AWS support plans have been revamped. We now have 3 tiers. We used to have just 1 tier. We've now got business support, enterprise support, unified operations, with unified operations being your highest tier. I think key takeaways there is a difference of SLAs. I mean, I use AWS Enterprise Support regularly. It's an absolute brilliant service. If you don't use it, you should look into it. It's available through your workload account, depending on the tier you have or paying for. Essentially, you've got, like, for high severity incidents, you could have a 30-minute SLA or turnaround for the business support, 15 minutes for enterprise, and 5 minutes for unified operations. There's a bit of blurb about some of the features you're going to get, and I think I will just quickly talk through that if that's okay. So obviously there's a difference in pricing. There is lower pricing as part of the announcements for business and enterprise. What you would have been paying before, you now be paying less. The differences between them, the key takeaways would be a depth of proactive engagement. Things that can be done on your behalf is operational readiness reviews for any major events you're going to be doing, like major releases, big cutovers.
you get access to a dedicated, so the variation between them would be access to dedicated AWS personnel. And there's a level of AI-driven monitoring and recommendations that you get through the case management tool, which you'll get to see once you open up Enterprise Support. I think I might have lost the clicker, so let's just see if this works. Yeah, brilliant. All right, to give you an idea on the unified operations team structure, this is all that you get available to you if you're in that tier. I'll let you digest that for 2 minutes. Obviously, you've got a designated team and you've got an event trigger team. Talking about 5-minute SLA for high severity events. It's the kind of things you can benefit from. All right, and we're on to AWS DevOps agents. So AWS announced 3 frontier agents. James introduced us to that. So we've got the DevOps agent. Nadia, I saw a lot of similarities to your solution, and so I believe this is still preview. So the DevOps agent, security agent, and Kiro agent are preview. You can deploy them now. I think just the 2 were available through the console to US East 1. And the kind of capability you're going to get really drew some parallels to what Nadia had looked at, that maybe was built out, by hand, by tailoring a lot of services together. So with the DevOps agent, there's a QR code if you are interested on all the capability. You can basically, you can provide, you get a chat area through the console, or you can use a CLI, and you can provide natural language prompts directly in, or you can use, your IDE. DevOps agent will perform things like automated incident investigations. So they'll hook into CloudWatch, identify alarms that might be triggered, and do a full investigation for you. So that's considered incident coordination. They can integrate into tools. I think you mentioned, James, like ServiceNow. They can send you a message on Slack if you hook that up. They can make mitigation and action suggestions, and they can provide insights on past incident data. Security agents, very similar, slightly different angle, obviously security lens. You can upload design docs to the security agent, and it can do a full analysis of your documentation. It'll do pull request scanning. It does support things like GitHub. If you're using GitHub, maybe GitLab. I haven't looked into the full complement, but I did look up GitHub because it applied to me. It'll do things like your OS top 10. It'll scan your code for that. It'll also look at org requirements you might have, and you define those organizational requirements in a section in the agent called security requirements. And these could include things like encryption standards, log retention rules, and so on and so on. So it'll basically be evaluating against those rules. And another thing that security agent does is automated pen testing, which I thought was pretty cool. Kiro, obviously, just a Q&A session. Has anyone in this room not heard of Kiro? All right, okay.
That was the first time I had heard about it.
Okay, cool. That's good. We didn't take that for granted. So AWS have brought out an agent for developer assistance called Kiro, but they've also basically ported Visual Studio Code into their own IDE that integrates with that service that you'll be using. Think of it as your code assistant helping you along your journey. Nadia talked a little bit about Kiro and what they can do for you. The demo showed how it can write up your user stories for you, it can help you design and do diagrams. It can then start to build out the code you're looking for from an architectural perspective. Basically, you can just tell it what you're after, and it'll ask you questions and help you get to that final product that's ready for production. So really, really cool. I went to reInvent. It was incredible. I was very lucky that my company sent me. And one of the themes I noticed was every speaker there had built their presentation on using Kiro. That's quite a strong message for me that it's definitely used internally in AWS very broadly. So if you haven't had a play with it, there's a huge free tier. Take a look at it. It looks really, really cool. I think back in the day, people had to wait for getting a license code to use it. Now it looks like it's GA. You can just sign up. So really, really cool. There is a slide here I just want to show you. This, obviously, I've not used the Kiro agent, but it looks like it's from a CloudWatch alarm. It's triggered inside the Kiro agent. You can see that it's done an investigation for you, and you can ask it natural language queries on the right with the agent itself. I think this is DevOps, the DevOps agent? Yeah, sorry, not Kira, DevOps agent. All right, so keep going. I know I'm going to run out of time. So this was a very last minute put together. We can't talk about the announcement without Lambda durable functions. It created a lot of hype, especially it made it into my inbox. From what I can read, there's a QR code if you're interested in reading more. It feels like they've combined Lambda with step functions. And as James pointed out earlier, just in a conversation, it's potentially powering all of these agents. So you basically can now have a long-running, reliable process. So when you invoke a Lambda, obviously if you've toggled that for a durable function, that process can run for up to a year. It has the ability to pause and resume. It has the ability to set checkpoints and replay at certain points. They've come up with an open source SDK for you to start building. Pretty exciting for me to get some experience in this. So take a look if that is something that you're interested in. All right, so EKS, I'm currently working with EKS. So for me, this was really one of the things I went to reInvent to learn more about. The big announcement is EKS capabilities, QR code if anyone's interested. Essentially, they've introduced, I think it's 3 capabilities.
Can we go back for 1 second?
Oh, sorry. I'll stick up the QR code for a little bit longer. See if I can find it here and refresh my memory. All right, so that was a little bit about the evolution of EKS. Obviously, I joined in quite late to the party. Obviously, using the control plane, managed node groups, obviously the Fargate, serverless containers. There's some really cool add-ons that we're using behind the scenes. You're probably not aware. EKS console, auto mode. I explored and decided I'd like to really customize my EKS platform how I'd like. So I haven't used that, but it looks really cool because EKS does have quite a learning curve. And then introducing capabilities. So what are capabilities? Essentially, they've really looked at, I guess, the market, and there's a big drive for Argo CD. See if I can load that up. There we go. So they've brought in Argo CD. So I guess we'll start with what are capabilities. They're fully managed services that are outside of your customer account that you can utilize. And they'll do things like Argo CD, which is continuous deployment. It's GitOps, essentially, for managing your EKS platform. You've got AWS Controller for Kubernetes. Essentially, they've introduced custom resource definitions for AWS services. And you've got, I guess, if anyone, show of hands quickly who's used EKS. Give you an idea. Okay, there's a few. All right, so if you think about Kubernetes and that learning curve, we're working with Kubernetes manifests. We might be using Helm charts. Obviously, you can take that away as things for us to define what our platform will be running, what AWS resources, what custom software we might be running. AWS has essentially allowed you to use a similar language using Kubernetes manifest, and you can actually create AWS resources. If you want an S3 bucket, you want a Lambda, anything like that, you can now do that through custom resources instead of your own code that you then deploy through. And they've also introduced Kube Resource Orchestrator. This is very interesting. I think if you're starting to write a lot of Kubernetes manifests, so that's the definition language for defining your platform containers and what they contain, you can actually start to roll those up into like higher level abstract templates. The parallel I draw to that is like CDK. If you're familiar with CDK's level 3 constructs, it's a similar kind of thing. You can have a web service, and that web service can contain a bunch of Kubernetes kinds. So you can have a deployment application. You can have ingress and a bunch of other things. You can roll them all up into a single web service, and then you can roll that out for a purchase ordering system, inventory system, that kind of thing. You can have multiple of them. There was an interesting pricing slide. If I can get to it. Yes. So what they've done for pricing-wise, you've got a base charge. So just by using that service, you'll have a base charge, and then you have a usage charge, and that's done at an hourly rate. I made some notes a little bit about that. So for Argo CD, it's for a managed application. That's what you're charged for, so per application managed. ACK, so the controller for Kubernetes, basically it's for each resource managed. So if you have an S3 bucket, you've got one of those, it's for each one managed. And then the Kubernetes, the KRO usage, this one is basically if you've got a composed resource, it's per one of those, not necessarily how many times you roll it out. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so moving on. I know I've run out of time. All right, ECS, obviously the alternative, simple world to EKS. So that would be what would normally look like deploying an ECS containerized service. You have your VPCs, ECS, task definitions. That's my battery on my phone. And you've got elastic load balancers. You might have to tell that all together, provide all the configuration. So what they've introduced is ECS Express. And with ECS Express, they've reduced that complexity. So it's at the bottom. They're just showing you there's other ways to roll out an ECS service, but ECS Express will essentially allow you to reduce the amount of configuration you have to supply up front. Let's see if I can give you an example. So you basically need to provide as a minimum your container image, a task execution role, an infrastructure role. So task execution is so that you can pull images from ECR, you can send logs to CloudWatch. Infra role is permissions for ECS and related resources it might be accessing, and then any optional config that you might need around scaling limits, health check paths, environment variables. So it's reducing that effort of configuration up front that you might need to define and roll out. All right, let's see what else. There's a QR code if anyone wants to read a bit more about it. And lastly, they've got, I think I'm on the last one, yep. They have rolled out fully managed MCP services for EKS and ECS. So if you're using, say, an IDE and you want to start talking to your cluster's state, you can basically connect to those. They're fully managed by AWS, and you can pull down real-time information on your EKS or ECS platform. Very, very useful. I'm going to wrap it up there. Over to you.
If you could just stick to the announcements. We have gone a little over, but we are very grateful to you, the audience, for being so generous with your time. So to wrap up, we have we have some community announcements. Coming up on April 11th, on a Saturday, is our AWS Oceania Virtual Community Day. So that's basically a YouTube channel that streams the whole day. It's the largest community day. It's online. And we have people from New Zealand, Australia, our Asia Pacific. I even have friends from Poland and Ukraine who are going to be speaking because of the time zone difference. So if you can't make it physically to a community day, jump in online. And speaking of locally, we have Latency Conference coming up on Tuesday 19th on May. And then later in the year, we actually have our local AWS Community Day in Brisbane. So it's in October. I'm giving you a bit of a heads up. I'm flying over. I think some of us are flying over. If some of you want to start planning and fly over with me, I could do with the company because I really don't want to fly to Brisbane by myself. So start thinking about that. And lastly, what's not on the slide is our CFPs. We have had such an amazing response for our call for speakers, but we would welcome more people to submit. So we as a user group, we exist for you, to develop you as the local talent. So if you have inclining to speak or present, it doesn't matter if you're a beginner, professional, or anywhere in between, we welcome everyone. Actually, can we get the organizers to put their hands up? So if you are interested, find the people, including me, come speak to me, or find us online at our Meetup page, or LinkedIn, get in contact if that is something that interests you, and we would be more than welcoming. So we'll leave it there. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you. Bye.